Random House. Hay que decir que este es el grupo editorial más grande de habla inglesa, el primero en español en América Latina y el segundo en España. Se trata de un personaje de la mayor importancia en la industria editorial, con una larga trayectoria de éxitos. Y hoy vamos a platicar con Markus Dohle de muchos temas relacionados precisamente con la industria editorial, varios de los temas que hemos tratado en Es la hora de opinar, el papel de la tecnología, el papel que juegan los escritores y los lectores, cómo está la situación de la industria y en particular también cómo se encuentran Penguin Random House. Me acompaña Javier Tello. Javier, muy buenas noches. And thank you very much, Markus, for being here. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. This is your first time in Guadalajara in the field.
It is indeed.
So thank you very much for this interview. Okay, so we are going to divide into four themes our discussion today. First, we're going to talk about technology, then about the role of readers and writers, then about how the state of the art of the industry, and finally, how is Penguin Random House doing at this point?
How many hours do we have?
Well, let me start with a big discussion, with a big debate in the industry, which is print versus electronic books. What percentage today of the business is print and what percentage is digital? And how do you see that evolving in time? Will print books and bookstores eventually disappear?
No, I don't think so. I've always believed that that we will find a new coexistence between print and digital books. For us, it doesn't really matter whether we sell a print book, a physical book, or an electronic book, an e-book, to a reader. We want to sell as many books as possible, and we want to provide our authors with the widest possible readership. When the digital transformation started and e-books began to grow after 2007, I always said that print will always be important for us. Even in 100 years from now, a big chunk of our business will be physical. So print will always be important, and digital is becoming more and more important. And the correlation between print and digital is an and. It's both. It's not an either or. The percentage today on a global basis is roughly 80-20.
80-20.
80% is still physical.
Wow.
And 20% is digital. And we know that in Latin America, the digital percentage is, of course, much lower. The public discussion is actually the other way around. It's 80% digital and 20% print.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the majority of our business is print and will be print in the foreseeable future.
In developed countries, what's the percentage?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Here in Mexico, for example, it's still very small. Yeah. It's under 5% still.
Under 5%.
In Spain, we are above 5%, including audiobooks that are mainly actually digital. In Germany, for example, where Random House is also market leader, the Verlagsgruppe, the percentage is 15%.
50%.
And in our very developed countries, in the Anglo-American world, it is between 25 and 30%.
Okay.
And the overall mix globally is 80-20.
80-20. Javier.
Everything is 80-20. It's Pareto, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
80-20.
You say 100 years from now, print will remain important. What is the explanation behind that? Why do you think print will remain important? Is it the importance of the book as an object? It will be important because certain books will be in print, but most will not. It will be important in what sense? Forgetting about percentages, what is the importance of the actual print book? Why do you think it will survive?
I think that the most important thing for us is that we truly believe that storytelling and the consumption of stories, that will survive. So I first and foremost believe that books and stories have a future.
Okay.
They've always been important. And again, for us, it doesn't really matter whether we sell a print book or a digital book. I think the print format has advantages. It has been ideal for readers for 500 years now, and I'm definitely sure it's going to survive another 100 years. Okay. You know, it is. You know, many people today. You know, we see that. You know, we saw the rise of ebooks. So many people bought an e-reader, or they consume and read their stories on tablets. Many of these readers become hybrid readers. So at home, they take a print book again because it's just a very convenient, it's the perfect device. And when they are traveling, they take their e-reader and their tablet and read, you know, when they are away from home. So I truly believe in that healthy coexistence between print and digital. I don't have a crystal ball. Okay. 5 years ago in 2010, when when ebooks were steeply on the rise, who would have thought that in 2015, 80% of our business globally would still be print? People were saying like perhaps 50 or 30% will be print, but not 80. So I think the physical book will have a long life.
But I am more skeptical, to tell you the truth. When I see my sons, when I see the young people, I see that they prefer digital than print. Would you say that young people are leading more towards digital books than adults like us?
They actually don't.
No?
If you look at the percentages of digital in certain categories,
yes.
In the young adult, middle grade, and children's book area, the average digital percentage is much lower than on the adult side.
Wow.
That has to do with illustrated books, of course.
Okay.
But even in the young adult area, it's lower than on the adult side. One reason is that very often moms buy the books for their kids. That's one reason. In bookstores, you know, of course, the school system plays a role. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's good that in most schools, kids get still, you know, familiar with the physical book, with the physical experience, which I think has an impact. The children's and young adult category is actually globally the most stable, and in most territories, the fastest growing categories of all, which is very encouraging for us with regards to the future of books and reading for generations to come.
Okay.
We could talk about ebooks versus print for an hour, but let me change subjects and ask you about another innovation that perhaps represents more of a challenge to publishers like Penguin Random House, and that's self-editing. How big of a threat, if threat is the right word, how big of a threat is self-editing, and what's your take on its future?
I think self-publishing is an interesting phenomenon, and you know, I've always thought that both traditional competition and new competition that emerges through the digital transformation is eventually healthy for publishers, because we have to prove ourselves and, you know, our service portfolio that we provide to authors, retailers, and readers every day. So I think that self-publishing only makes us better. Okay. I also think that the overlap between self-publishing and, let's call it, traditional publishing is not that huge. We stand for high-end literature and books for quality and quality assurance. We work on a book and try to, together with the author, create the perfect product before we bring it to market. Self-publishing is the opportunity for everyone to write something, and to create an ISBN and put it out there. I think that more than ever before, readers need guidance and orientation. They need help to find their best next read. Okay. And I think that the flood of self-publishing, the flood of information, and with that, the flood of ISBNs that has tenfolded, over the last years in the English language world, in particular in the United States, is more an opportunity for traditional publishers than a threat. We are actually drowning in information and drowning in stories, and we are thirsty for the next best read for us.
But let's say I am a writer and I want to publish my book, and I have now two options. I can go with Penguin Random House, or I can self-publish my work in Amazon platform. Amazon has a platform for self-publishing. What does does Penguin Random House or any business in the publishing business gives me to give that to the writer? What's the added value for a writer for being published by you?
Well, first of all, of course, there is the service portfolio that publishers have been providing for centuries. Of course, the creative partnership, the editorial work, creating the perfect content and drilling it down to its essence before we publish it. It's the package. It is actually the marketing and publicity, so trying to create word of mouth and momentum for the book in order to maximize sales. And of course, the sales function, the printing function, the distribution function, getting as many of those books into the hands of readers. To drill it down, publishing has always been about two main services: managing creativity and maximizing reach. Publishing is a service business. We are intermediaries between authors and readers, and we try to manage authors and maximize their audience. That's what we do as publishers. And I think these services are still necessary, and perhaps even more necessary in this world where everyone can publish a book today. Many of those authors who publish their works themselves first try to actually find an agent or a publishing house to bring their work to market. Another argument is that there are only a few self-published books that really become significant in terms of sales and number of units that are being sold. And the vast majority of the authors who are successful as self-published authors try to find a traditional publisher for their next work. So that means for me that our services that we provide, the financial support that we give, is still an effective and a very promising proposition for authors today and tomorrow.
I would have thought that somebody who is a well-established author, a very successful, well-established author, who sells a lot, is that particular author that might have the incentive not to continue with the sort of traditional editor and say, hey, I'm already young, there. No. Unknown author maybe needs the backup of a big publishing company. But if you think of your highest selling author in Penguin Random House, he or she would seem to be in an ideal position to say, hey.
Yeah, why do you think that household authors, brand name authors in this world, and let me just mention a few in the United States, take a Daniel Steele, take a John Grisham, a Dan Brown, a Ken Follett, or others. Why do you think no one of those authors has ever, pursued a self-publishing path? Why do you think that is?
Stephen King, no? Stephen King tried.
How often? How often?
No, he tried and he went back, no?
I think the last one was, again, published a few weeks ago by Simon Schuster again.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is that publishing is a very risky business.
So the advance...
we actually pay advances before, you know, most of the works are even, you know, being created. And I think our brand name authors, they like that a lot. So I think we are in a good position. It's not easy. It's not easy to make the same amount of money, even for a household name and brand author, by pursuing the self-publishing route. Again, I have a lot of respect. It brings a new dynamic into the industry. We watch it and monitor it very closely. The price points are different. And again, it makes us only better, and it forces us to expand our service portfolio and to increase our service levels for all constituents in the industry.
One last question about technology. A former CEO of a broadcasting company here in Mexico, who was in the business of content, he used to say, content is king, but distribution is King Kong. No? So I'm going to ask you about distribution channels. You are also in the business of content, but the distribution channels are changing. You have now Amazon, you have Google, you have Facebook.
Yeah.
Is that a threat for the publishing companies?
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, whether I want to be king or King Kong. I'm not sure whether I really want to be King Kong. But anyway, it's a scary thought. But I think that that the technology companies are a huge opportunity for publishers. Because they give us the opportunity. Again, publishing is about managing creativity and maximizing reach. And the technology companies give us the opportunity to reach more end consumers, because millions of end consumers, we know much more than 1 billion, are actually members on Facebook, and Amazon's end consumer base and customer base is growing by 25 million people every year. So if anything, they help us to get our books into the hands of more readers. I think that if you think about distribution and content, right, we sort of need each other. Amazon needs us and our content, and we need Amazon, and we want to connect our content to Amazon's huge end consumer base. So the relationship should not be about confrontation. It should be always about cooperation only. We need each other. We depend on each other. They can't sell anything without our books, at least not books.
Yeah.
And we actually want to find the largest audience for our writers. So I think we are in a good place. And being on the content side is not a bad thing.
Ok, thank you. Vamos a hacer una breve pausa y vamos a regresar con Markus Dohle. Él es el Chief Executive Officer, el director general de Penguin Random House. Regresamos en un momento más. Continuamos con nuestra cobertura especial desde la Feria Internacional del Libro en Guadalajara. Estamos platicando con Markus Dohle. Él es el director general de Penguin Random House, una de las editoriales más grandes del mundo. Y vamos a pasar ahora al tema de quién está leyendo y quién está escribiendo. Javier.
Let me switch now topics, leave technology behind, and talk about readers and writers. And starting with readers. How has the reading experience changed over time, and how do you see that experience evolving in the next few decades? Again, nobody has a crystal ball, but...
Well, again, I think it's part of the human DNA, both storytelling and the consumption of stories, whether you listen or you read. I don't think that the general experience of immersing yourself into a story will significantly change or will significantly be disrupted by the digital transformation. And I think that's a good thing, because we truly believe that books matter and that long-form reading matters. And our mission is to actually do exactly that, to nourish a universal passion for reading and to create the future of books and reading in our society for generations to come. The good news is that a book only makes sense and a story as a whole. So you can't disaggregate a book. One chapter alone doesn't make sense. Like in the music industry, one song of a CD makes sense, but only one chapter doesn't make sense. So I think that that the general experience of reading a book and connecting to content in long form will not change.
Let me just quickly follow up on that. It seems, I agree, we've always been storytellers and we will always be storytellers and consumers of stories. But maybe the real enemy, rather than the ebook and self-publishing and Amazon, is Netflix. Maybe the future is watching series, watching movies. That could stop people from reading, whether ebooks or print books, and yet preserve the storytelling and the story consumption.
Yeah, I think that the book has survived a few disruptions in the media categories and media business as a whole in the last 500 years since Gutenberg. And I don't want to take this lightly, because the digital transformation is a huge one. And there is a lot of competition out there, you know, for reading. And you're absolutely right. For us, the most important goal is to keep readers interested in reading, to get books in the hands of young readers, to make them readers. And if you are a reader, you are a lifelong reader, right? So we try to start as early as possible. So keep readers interested in reading and provide them with great stories that fit their interests. The book markets over the last 50 years, you know, with the television disruption, you know, and other developments in other media categories, have been very stable. And do you know why? The reason for that stability is that the readership has been stable over the last 50 years. So that's our most important goal, to make people, as early as possible, lifelong readers. And that's why the children's category is extremely important for us strategically, and we want to grow in that area, and we are in many of our territories market leader in that area.
You have become very successful in segmenting the market. Give us a picture, a brief picture about the different segments of the industry, and who is reading what in each category, in each segment.
Well, we have a healthy distribution of, like, you know, fiction and non-fiction and children's consumption in our main territories. Again, the most important development for us is strategically to invest in the children's and young adult area. I told you that it's very encouraging that in most territories in the world, we see similar patterns, that the children's and young adult categories are the most stable and in many cases the fastest growing category. So that's actually very encouraging. Yes, there is a lot of competition out there, Netflix, gaming, and all sorts of things, you know, that you can do today, you know, with your devices in your hands. But it's very encouraging to see that that the children's category is very robust. The demographic development, and, you know, for example, in Latin America is actually very important for us too, and favorable and positive, given the fact that, you know, Mexico, for example, is a quite young country.
Yes.
So we get a lot of new readers on board. At least we have the opportunity to get more readers on board. Literacy in the world is actually increasing. That's also helping us. And the demographic development that older people have actually the money to buy more books is positive for us too. So I'm quite confident that we can achieve the goal to actually compete in this digital world, and we have to prove ourselves and the joy, the inspiration, the education, and the entertainment of reading every day, and we are ready for that.
Are there differences between the regions, or they are, I mean, like young adults or or the kids, they are reading the same in Latin America than in Europe, than in the United States? I mean, tell us about regional differences.
Yeah. So I always say that publishing is a multi-local business. It is a multi-domestic business. And it's important for us to run Penguin Random House also in a multi-local, multi-domestic way. We have different languages. We also want to support local culture and local talent. We want to discover and nurture and break out local authors and introduce them to the world. Publishing has always been a territorial business and not really a global business. So we run this business with very strong territories, very independent territories, and then we try to cooperate on global brands. Of course, the digitization and social media have actually resulted in the fact that some of these hits go viral and global very quickly. And of course, we try to benefit from those global phenomena. Mm-hmm. And they can go global in different categories. What's really encouraging is that if you look at the global phenomena of the last 20 years, the vast majority of those phenomena were in the young adult area, beginning with Harry Potter, yeah, and last year, you know, with John Green, and in between the Stephanie Meyers, you know, and the Hunger Games, and so many of these global phenomena in the publishing world are in the young adult and children's category. I think that's very encouraging.
Why you emphasize the local dimension to the publishing industry, but I'm surprised that why hasn't, as far as reading books goes, if you think of Hollywood, for example, you have global blockbusters, and it's very difficult to compete locally with what Hollywood is producing at a global level. Why hasn't that happened with books? Why aren't we all reading global bestsellers? It works for Hollywood. So, I mean, so it's not a cultural thing that Mexicans want to read Mexican authors that talk about Mexican things, because Mexicans are watching Hollywood blockbusters. Why shouldn't they be reading, or why are they not reading global blockbusters books?
They do.
Okay.
Thank God. We have sold a lot of copies of 50 Shades of Grey in Mexico, and we are still selling. It's, you know, and counting. And so I think what we want to achieve is, you know, again, a healthy coexistence of local and global. Of course, we want to introduce, you know, writers from other territories, you know, into the countries. But again, the local component, think about nonfiction, think about politics, think about local industries, think about local interests and local history. So many categories are locally driven. I think the fact that some of these books are traveling now around the world because of that viral opportunity, social media, and so on, that is a great opportunity. I think that, you know, if you compare it to Hollywood and blockbusters, I think what we want to achieve is in books, we want to maintain the diversity of voices in our market. I think Hollywood has become very focused on only a few blockbusters. We stand for diversity. We stand for giving important voices a platform and the audience they deserve, both on a local basis and on a global basis.
Let me to switch to writers. What is the most important criteria for picking up a writer? I mean, that's part of the key success factor of your business, but tell us, how do you do it?
I mean, the most important, and I think the most important success factor is that the CEO would not pick the writers. So we have so many extremely talented editors and publishers in the room here, and they know so much better. I think there is no real, catalog of criteria.
Yeah.
And thank God, there is no recipe for bestsellers. There is no formula for bestsellers. And, our business is a creative business. We see ourselves as a creative force, as an institution for our society, a cultural institution for our society. And because of the unpredictability, in this creative business, because of the creative volatility in publishing, I think we can maintain the diversity too, because we just don't know which books would break out or not. I think it's a good thing. What's necessary, I think the most important criteria, if I may speak for the editors and publishers in the room, is that you're really passionate for, an idea, and you help the author to bring that idea to life, to invest into a risk, and that you can envision the audience for that idea. I think that passion is the most important precondition to make a book successful.
We have to go to a commercial.
Okay.
Sorry. Tenemos que hacer una breve pausa, pero regresamos con Markus Dohle, el tercer segmento, con esta charla muy interesante con el director general de Penguin Random House. Quédese aquí en Foro TV, que continúa la hora de opinar. Bueno, regresamos con Markus Dohle. Él es el director general de Penguin Random House. Javier.
You mentioned that one criteria is for the editor to feel passionate or feel passionate about an idea, about communicating an idea. My question would be, any idea? Would you publish an explicitly racist writer? Would you publish that might have a lot of public, that might generate a lot of passion? Any idea?
As I said, we stand for diversity, and we see ourselves as a forum of opinions. And I think it's important that we maintain that in publishing. We don't want to end up in mainstream. Publishing is also, for us, a service to our society. We want diversity of voices and a diversity of opinions. The most important rule for us is that we want to comply with law.
That's the limit.
That is the most important limit for us. And I think the legal framework, human rights, those are the most important pillars for the framework for us to decide whether we want to publish a work or not.
Let me switch to the state of the publishing business. And you are head of a major corporation, international corporation, and some people say that you have been acquiring several of small publishing companies. And some say you are killing the industry because you are consolidating this incredible amount of publishing companies. What do you say to that criticism?
Well, I would say that's absolutely not our goal, and I don't think it's even reflecting the reality. We see ourselves actually not as a corporation and as a company. We see ourselves as a creative force and an institution for our society, as a cultural institution. I define Penguin Random House and Penguin Random House Grupo Editorial as a community of small and medium-sized publishing houses. And when we formed Penguin Random House a few years ago, and in the Spanish language world, Penguin Random House Grupo Editorial, Random House Mondadori and Alfaguara, Santillana, 1.5 years ago, I defined it as the coming together of two communities of small publishing houses that become one community of small publishing houses. And therefore, I defined it as the most boring thing that ever happened in the publishing industry and in the creative environment. The heart and soul of Penguin Random House is, and are in our, are our imprints, are our creative homes for publishing talent and author talent. We are a community of 250 small and medium-sized presses. And Penguin and Random House had emerged over the last 50 years through many, many acquisitions and mergers. And we actually brought these two communities of small publishing houses together into one. And we think we can create the future of books and long-form reading in our society. We can perform that better together than as separate entities.
Javier.
What is the role of emerging markets in the publishing business? I mean, will they be driving growth in this industry in the medium term, and in particular Latin America and specifically Mexico? What would you say?
No, absolutely. With Penguin Random House Grupo Editorial, really a dream has come true for us. Becoming the market leader in Spanish language Latin America, and having a fantastic collaboration with two publishing houses in Brazil has been strategically absolutely our top priority. For many reasons. First of all, you mentioned it, our mature markets are not growing anymore. And there is huge potential in emerging markets for us to actually create growth and find more readers for our works and our authors. Latin America is for us the most important emerging market in the world. It's already significant, in particular the Spanish language, but also Portuguese. The huge population in Brazil, is of course the second largest language, Spanish, in the world. We have a growing Latino community in the United States, so it is even an impact, beyond the border to the United States. Very important for us, that market too. So, and Mexico is perfectly positioned, both, territorially, but also as an economy, as a country. I said it's young. I think the government has done an amazing job helping to bring young people to books in schools with a school library program, and we want to piggyback on that and help to grow the leadership in Mexico and in all of Latin America.
Markus, how do you price a book? What's the pricing process for a publishing company?
Thank God the CEO is not pricing the books, So
what do you do? You don't pick up the...
Yeah, right. So I serve my people and my authors, and try to make them happy every day, because I know if I make them happy, they make everybody happy. It's very simple what I do, actually. I think it's part of that editorial and publishing instinct to actually put a price tag, and with that, value behind intellectual property. I think it's part of that process, and I think it's important that intellectual property has value and keeps that value over time, because otherwise we come into trouble and we can't nurture creatives anymore, and we can't provide them with enough money to make a living off of their art of writing and their creative talent.
Javier.
You mentioned a while ago that it makes no sense to talk about an individual chapter of a book, but it does make sense to talk about a chapter at a time. Why not sell a chapter at a time rather than whole books?
Yeah, I think that there are several startups in the world that sell per line, per page, per chapter, and actually you get even your books sort of you get them in Japan there is a very very successful startup. You get one chapter per day. No matter what, in the end of the day, you need to read the whole book, whether you get it in chunks or you get it as a whole. I think it's good to get it as a whole. Perhaps you want to read the whole night and just finish the book because you're so excited. But for me, that doesn't make a huge difference. The most important thing is that a story only makes sense as a whole, and that our content does not get disaggregated.
Markus, you are in Mexico. Let's talk about this market. What are the plans of Penguin Random House for Mexico in particular?
Well, Mexico, has had a very, very positive development for us over the last years. Actually, it was sort of it was the market where Random House Mondadori and Alfaguara were actually equal in size. So we actually doubled our business, with the coming together of the two communities of small publishing houses. So we see huge potential, and we see it here at the fair. The energy at the fair, the average age, the audience. There are so many young people here. So I think we have huge potential. The population is growing, and I think Mexico can be and will be one of our fastest growing markets in Latin America, and I think all over the world. So it is already one of the largest businesses of Grupo Editorial and also of Penguin Random House in terms of territories.
Javier.
These days, one always has to talk about China. What about China? How does China figure in the publishing industry?
It's an interesting question, and I want to answer that question in the most transparent way. I think China is a very challenging market, and it starts with the political environment. We still have censorship in China. Even 50 Shades of Grey was being censored.
Really?
There's only 20.
I think so. I think it was not being sold. But that's of course something you can't really own a publishing company. You need a joint venture, and actually you are always in the minority. We have found Penguin at the time, and now Penguin Random House has found a very good way of publishing in China on a book by book and ISBN by ISBN basis. It's a huge country. It has huge potential. The market is extremely fragmented. Huge number of publications every year. Very low price points. I give you an example. One of the challenges is a children's chapter book in China costs 30 cents and consumer price. And we have world prices for paper and printing. It's very hard to make money in China at those price points. So I think it's going to take many, many years to get China into a huge market for us. What's really growing in China is the distribution of English language content into China, given the fact that the English language in China is becoming more and more important. So our largest business right now in China is the distribution of English language content, not publishing, but distributing English language content into China. And the existence, coming back to technology, of e-commerce companies like Amazon in China gives us the opportunity to distribute countrywide within a few days. So distribution can be King Kong. And in China, it's really important. And there is, of course, India with huge opportunity, with more than 1 billion people, going forward. And yes, it's strategically also important for us. But, you know, Latin America is by far the largest emerging market for us. Okay. And I think the one that will grow much faster in the coming years than China and India.
Well, Markus, thank you very much for being here. That's it. It's over. That's it. We have to go.
Was that okay for you guys? Yeah. Thank you.
En esta ocasión nos da mucho gusto recibir a Markus Dohle. Markus es el director general, el CEO, el Chief Executive Officer de Penguin Random House. Hay que decir que este es el grupo editorial más grande de habla inglesa, el primero en español en América Latina y el segundo en España. Se trata de un personaje de